The release of Playboi Carti's debut album and second commercial project, Die Lit, on the 11th of May 2018 simultaneously impressed and infuriated fans of hip-hop. And whether people liked it or not, Carti was sending hip-hop in an entirely new direction. Playboi Carti would grow up in Riverdale, Atlanta. He started music in 2011 when he was just 15 and back then was known as Sir Cartier. At 16, he released his mixtape Young Misfit, and at 17, he changed his name to Playboi Carti. He blew up as a prominent name in SoundCloud rap, particularly with the song Broke Boy. He soon drew the attention of bigger artists and performed at Ye's fashion show Yeezy Season, and Carti appeared on A$AP Mob's debut studio album Cozy Tapes Volume 1. In 2017, he appeared on the XXL Freshman list, which highlights artists who the magazine thinks are going to break through. Carti and XXXTentacion were the key rappers featured on that cover. His self-titled mixtape was released that year, and while it didn't sell much, generating 21,000 first week and then 7,000 pure album sales, this tape did have Lil Uzi Vert on it on tracks such as Lookin' and Woke Up Like This, who was also coming up around the same time, but there were songs on here that really took off over time. Producing most of the tracks on this tape was Pierre Bourne, who would be a key figure in perfecting and polishing Carti's sound over time. Pierre Bourne is known for drawing samples from a wide range of music, which often involves even taking inspiration from the music of video games and cartoons. It's largely this production that gives Carti his experimental yet catchy sound, at least at this point in his career. A Pitchfork review of his debut mixtape said, "Playboi Carti feels like a break from life, the soundtrack to a mindless good time. Women, money, and all types of drugs are everywhere, but mostly, Carti's just flexing so that his listeners can do the same." Carti has been derogatorily called a mumble rapper. What Carti was doing at this time didn't follow the rules of hip-hop and was dismissed by many hip-hop purists and even, you could say, hip-hop middle-of-the-road people. These aren't the 16 bars followed by a hook that you would expect with a hip-hop track. Instead, Carti was creating something different, with a series of ad-libs and repetitive phrases, taking some influence from Chief Keef. The key thing about Carti, though, was that his music was all about having fun, and this philosophy would be encapsulated in his debut album, Die Lit. The first snippet that Carti was going to drop an album came at the latter end of 2017 when he released a video on his Instagram which was captioned Album Mode. Then in March of 2018, Pierre Bourne casually tweeted, "Somebody from the label wants me to tweet Carti's album's done." But before the album could officially launch, the track Love Hurts featuring Travis Scott was leaked onto the internet, forcing Carti to release the song the next day. This is a song diehard Travis fans may have been familiar with, as Travis posted a video of himself singing the hook in August of 2017. The strange beat on the song combined with the confidence of Carti set his fans up for what was coming up on this album. On May 11th, Die Lit was finally released in full. When explaining the title, Carti said in a Hot 97 interview, "I just want everybody to just look at my album and just take that as, like I said, like whatever you're doing, just do the best. Because you never know when it's over. You know what I'm saying? Just go out with a bang. Anything. Rapping, music, basketball, sports, whatever it is. Do it. Die Lit, man." Essentially, this was the Atlanta trap scene's equivalent of Carpe Diem, I guess. The cover for this album was taken by the music photographer Nick Walker, who wanted to draw a comparison between trap and punk rock, which both had the same raw and chaotic energy to them, although Carti was transitioning more so out of trap and he had his own little pocket. Walker told Complex, "So many of these hip-hop shows now have that energy from punk shows back in the day. Carti's music really goes against the grain too, just like punk used to do back in the day. He's into a bunch of different music and things like that, so it was a really easy pairing." Others have compared Carti to a lesser-known rock movement known as shoegaze, which focused on heavy reverb and atmospheric sound alongside vocals. Sonically, this album is clearly drawing from multiple music genres and not really much hip-hop. The opening track, Long Time, gives a bit of an insight into where Carti was in his life. As the name suggests, he raps about how it took him a long time to get to where he is now, repetitively, but you could even hear certain influences on this track. You can get an insight into his background a little bit of where he came from, where he raps, "I'd rather get caught with it than without it," in reference to carrying firearms. And this is one of 4 tracks not produced by Pierre Bourne, and was instead credited to Art Dealer. We first hear Pierre Bourne's production on the second track, R.I.P. In this song, we get a heavier song with booming 808s. A month later, a video would come out for this song, which depicted a mosh pit and once again reinforced the punk aesthetic behind the music in the album. Carti also addressed the label of being a mumble rapper and repeatedly says, F that mumbling stuff, bought a crib for my mama off that mumbling stuff. The next track, Lean For Real, contains the first feature of the album. On this track, Carti raps alongside UK rapper Skepta, who broke into the US with his album Konnichiwa the prior year. The song is about lean, so naturally a bit of a trippy, psychedelic beat behind it. In an interview with Tim Westwood, Carti said that Skepta had been supporting him since 2015, so it felt amazing to bring him onto the album as well. Just like his mixtape, Lil Uzi Vert also features on the song Shoota, and for many this song is one of the highlights of the album. The song was recorded in July 2017, and footage was leaked of Carti and Uzi making this track a year before the album's release. A demo was also leaked, and for the album, one of Uzi's verses was taken out, and Carti replaced this verse with one of his own. Sheldon Pierce from Pitchfork would say, "The beat never drops during the Uzi verse, creating a fascinating sort of tension. Instead, he burrows into the synth bed with his melodic flows, generating his own rhythms." Another feature came from Bryson Tiller, which was a surprising collaboration on the song Fell in Love, who before had invited Carti to perform his hit Magnolia on stage at one of his LA concerts. The song Foreign was also prematurely leaked on the internet, but only through Pierre playing a rough recording of what became that beat on IG Live. You could argue that by far the most important song on the album was Flatbed Freestyle, where we got to hear what's known as his quote-unquote baby voice that would come to be massively popular in the coming years. This was the high-pitched rapping voice he had used on earlier songs such as Telephone Calls and Blowin' Minds, but this would be the first time that some would say he perfected it, some, probably more on my side, would say it was insufferable, but regardless, it was a sound that had many imitators ever since. The album was met with a mixed reception. Highly praising the album was Pitchfork, who said, "The album almost seems to suspend gravity. How does a rapper this basic pull off a project this electrifying? No, Carti's rapping isn't any better this time out. And no, it really doesn't matter. When the carnival itself is this magnificent, there's no need to nitpick the ringleader." Similarly, a review on a different site said maybe Dial It is a tad overlong or weighed down by commercial obligations, but good luck trying to fret about that while RIP is on. Anthony Fantano's review was somewhat prophetic when he said, "Overall, I think there's a lot of creativity here. It's a pretty one-of-a-kind project, at least right now, until maybe dozens of other artists copy exactly what Dial It is doing." On the other end of the spectrum, Hip Hop DX wrote, "His songwriting, for lack of an eloquent description, is pretty terrible. Listeners could play a drinking game that involves taking a shot every time he says bit, or references effing your or a bit during the track list, and they would be blackout drunk." YouTuber Sean C. titled the video Dial It is Trash and explained, "Playboi Carti released an album over the weekend and it's 19 tracks. It's over an hour, and I'm like, what does a guy who's not lyrical, who really contains zero message in his music, have to say for an hour?" I'm more inclined to agree on the point that Dial It was trash, as I named it the worst album of that year, but it wasn't necessarily for lack of lyrics, as I enjoyed Self-Titled, and that didn't really have much lyrics either. But 5 years on from the album's release, the music from this album has aged remarkably well in comparison to other styles that have emulated the music. It's inspired an entire generation of rappers coming through, people like Ty Fontaine, Yeat, Ken Carson, just some of the artists I can think of off the top of my head. Even established artists like Ye and Drake were inspired to a degree by Carti as well, or at least felt some level of, hey, this guy's doing something else. He's definitely someone in hip-hop whose influence spans far and wide. However, there's some hesitation and pushback when people describe it as a classic. Of course, this album does not have the lyrical dexterity of Illmatic. It doesn't have the social commentary of a Pimp a Butterfly or the layers of meaning, or even, for example, the emotion of a Drake's Take Care. But should a classic album not try to be like what came before? When you think of a classic album, you'll probably attribute it to something which influenced other artists and culture at the time. And this is certainly the case for Dial It. An article from Album of the Year gives a reasonable explanation for this, where it says, "In addition to its musical impact, Dial It has also become a cultural phenomenon. Its catchphrases, ad-libs, and lyrics have inspired countless memes, social media posts, and merchandise. Its influence on fashion is also noteworthy, with fans incorporating references to the album into their clothing and accessories." Some would even argue that the polarization and the hate attributed to this album adds to it to being a classic. Like, if many people you think that Playboi Carti ruined hip-hop, then it's implied that you think that he shaped and influenced the genre in some sort of capacity. Ultimately, this album upset a lot of hip-hop fans. Maybe not upset being the right word, but it definitely irritated them and shocked them that people were so obsessed with it. But Playboi Carti, the younger generation coming through, may have had something that their parents and older siblings hated, which meant they had something of their own. Make sure to subscribe.